Welcome to this explainer on the cultural evolution of fear, where we're looking at urban legends and child psychology. Have you ever been walking completely alone, maybe down a quiet street, or even pushing through a crowded room, and suddenly you hear it, a voice, faint but crystal clear, calling your name? You spin around, but there's absolutely no one there. Tonight, we're going to look at the stories that keep us awake at night, the ancient fears passed down through generations, and the horrifying reasons they actually exist. So gather round because the dark is creeping in.
Seriously, have you ever heard your name whispered when no one is there? Local lore suggests that this isn't just your imagination playing tricks on you. These voices, they often belong to lost souls, spirits who just don't have the strength to scream or shout anymore. They can only muster a faint whisper, calling out to draw you near, hoping to trap the living in their endless nightmare. And it's precisely this kind of supernatural trap that brings us to the absolutely terrifying ordeal of a 9-year-old boy in Texas.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1, a child's grave mistake. To really understand how fear evolves, we need to examine this deeply horrifying true account of a young boy named Steve. It was supposed to be just a day of innocent summer fun near a notoriously dark lake, but a single, terrible mistake changed everything. Let's trace Steve's descent from innocent play into absolute danger and see how a series of small bad decisions led to a total nightmare. In the afternoon, a group of older bullies arrived and cruelly threw all of his friends' toys right into the murky water of the Black Lake. By late afternoon, Steve's frustration just boils over. He hurls a stone at the lead bully but completely misses, striking his own friend Jack squarely in the head. As sunset approached, the panicked kids rush a bleeding Jack to the hospital. And just like that, Steve was left behind, isolated, crying, completely alone by the edge of the dark water as the sun dipped below the horizon. You see, Steve wasn't just alone physically, he was mentally trapped. He was incredibly vulnerable, having recently transferred schools because of severe past bullying. And now, he was literally paralyzed by a deep, crushing regret for hurting his innocent friend. Because of this overwhelming guilt, he just sat there, lingering dangerously close to the deep water, way past his curfew. The night had completely enveloped the lake, making him a perfect target for the dark. Section 2. The Weeping Woman Awakens. Because when you isolate yourself in a place of tragedy, surrounded by pitch-black water, sometimes something sinister takes notice, something ancient.
The terror unfolded step by agonizing step. First, out of sheer frustration, Steve angrily throws the very last of his friend's toys into the pitch-black water. The second the water ripples, he hears it, the distinct, echoing sound of a woman sobbing uncontrollably in the dark. He spots her sitting on a nearby bench, wearing a very old, tattered white gown. Believing it was just a heartbroken stranger, Steve makes a fatal mistake. He actually walks up to her in the darkness and politely asks if she needs help.
As soon as the words left his mouth, the atmosphere instantly turned to ice. She stopped crying. The agonizing sobbing cut off into a dead, unnatural silence. She slowly lifted her head. And then, she smiled at him. But it wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator. She gently reached out and placed her freezing cold hand right against his cheek. And then she spoke, whispering right to him. "Steve, are you a good boy?" It was a chilling test of innocence. Notice how she didn't ask how he knew her or why he was out so late. She already knew his name, and she was testing him, measuring his guilt.
Section 3. Escape from the lake. Right then, every single survival instinct in Steve's 9-year-old body finally screamed at him to run. He backed away, turned on his heels, and sprinted as fast as humanly possible, plunging straight into the dark forest. Pure panic entirely took over.
But the forest? It offered absolutely no sanctuary. First, he bumps into a little ghost girl hiding behind a tree who actually begs him to help her be a good girl, so the woman in white will finally let her go. Ripping his arm away, Steve stumbles deeper into the woods, only to find a clearing filled with countless phantom children frantically running around in endless loops of playground games. Before Steve can even process the horror of this, a piercing, totally demonic scream echoes from the lake behind him. He turns back toward the water. The weeping victim on the bench is gone. Standing in the very center of the lake is a murderous monster. Her eyes are glowing a furious, horrifying red. Her hands are dripping with fresh blood, and all around her in the pitch-black water, bobbing on the surface, are the floating corpses of children. Those phantom kids in the woods weren't just ghosts.
They were her collection. Steve desperately tries to run, but he falls. In a final, horrific struggle, dozens of decaying hands emerge from the water and just grab his legs. He screams as he's violently dragged backward through the dirt, inching closer and closer toward the drowning depths. The water is literally touching his shoes. But at the last possible second, a pair of warm, living hands grabs his arms. It's Jack. He's back from the hospital, and he physically rips Steve right out of the grip of the dead.
Breathless and terrified, Jack looks at his friend and delivers a dire warning. Never come to this area after sunset. Jack explains that the entity in the water is La Llorona. She isn't just some random ghost, she's a cruel, ancient curse, a monster that specifically targets mischievous, disobedient children, dragging them down into the watery depths to trap them in her endless nightmare.
Now, what's really interesting about this next section, La Llorona and Panduba, is when we step back from the immediate horror of the lake and look at the broader, ancient picture of why these stories endure. There are deep cultural secrets hidden in these shadows.
Because we see something truly incredible here. It's like a giant puzzle. La Llorona is a legend famous in Texas and across the Americas, right? A weeping woman who drowns disobedient kids. But halfway across the globe, in the Indian state of Bihar, exists an almost identical legend called the Panduba. It's a fearsome entity lurking in local ponds, dragging mischievous kids into the water to drown them as punishment. Two strikingly similar watery graves born in completely different geographies. No way that's a coincidence, right?
Section 5. The psychology of fear. So the crucial point is why? Why do two cultures thousands of miles apart invent the exact same monster? Well, this brings us to the psychology of fear, and how horror is actually actively used as an ancestral tool for survival.
Think about the practical utility of these terrifying myths. Our ancestors didn't have tall chain-link fences around every dangerous river, pond, or black lake. So how do you keep a curious kid from wandering into deep water and drowning? You invent a monster. These stories enforce strict curfews. If you aren't home before dark, La Llorona is gonna get you. It acts as the ultimate supernatural consequence, literally weaponizing fear to effectively keep innocent children alive and well-behaved.
And this brilliantly illustrates our main takeaway today. The monsters are parental tools designed to prevent real-world tragedies. Whether you're growing up in Texas or Bihar, the primal fear of the dark water and the unseen horrors lurking beneath it forces you to listen to your elders. It is a cautionary tale wrapped up in a nightmare explicitly designed to save your life. The stories of La Llorona and the Panduba remind us that sometimes fear is exactly what keeps us safe. But the next time you find yourself wandering a little too close to the dark water after the sun goes down, you have to ask yourself, will you be a good child tonight? Because out there in the dark, something might just be waiting to test you. Thank you for joining me for this explainer. Stay safe, stay curious, and please, always get home before dark.